Hey guys, I am here to do another romance review somehow, some way. This isn't my normal posting day, and technically this is an ARC review of a book that came out last week, but you know what? We are accomplishing, and right now with the way that things are, you just sometimes have to just accomplish what you can, and this is what I've managed. So today, again, I read an ARC of this book, but it is actually out, so thank you to Edelweiss and the publisher. Even though I couldn't get it out before release date, I think that that's okay, because with romance novels, it really seems to be people are more interested in reviews of things when they want to read them rather than what the newest, hottest thing is, which is awesome. I read something totally different for this review, and I am still a little bit flummoxed about what I read. So we're gonna have to like talk about it because I'm confused. The book that I'm talking about is Enemy of My Dreams by Jenny Williamson. This is an ancient history romance. Now, for those who may have to have been here for a while to know this, I'm a huge fan of ancient history, specifically ancient Egypt, China, Japan. I did not have a strong Roman history phase, but this is indeed an ancient Roman history historical romance. So this book is not like supposed to be 100% historically accurate, but it does use a specific historical time frame to set its story. So this is around the time the Roman Empire is crumbling, and indeed one of the people helping it crumble is our male main character Alaric, who is the king of the Goths. The story actually opens with him when he is fighting for the Roman Empire and a specific emperor and all that type of stuff. And he has been promised for his, service to the Roman Empire, a homeland for his people. This is a promise that the emperor is constantly breaking up until the point where all of the Goths decide to become enemies of the Roman Empire again and begin to fight against it and not with it. After introducing us to this type of political dynamic, the book jumps forward a number of years in time when we are introduced to our female main character, Julia. She is the daughter of the emperor who, the guy who was emperor in the prologue chapter. This is right after that emperor's death. Julia's brother, Honorarius, has recently become emperor, and he wants nothing to do with her. He thinks that she is just in the way. She's making him look bad. As children, Julia was constantly just being smarter than her brother. She was better at strategy. She was better at their studies and all that type of stuff. But when her father basically told her that that's not what women are for, Julia abandoned her studies and just became a person who lives a very hedonistic lifestyle. So she throws a lot of party with a lot of alcohol. There's a lot of drugs involved, and her brother wants her to stop. So he tries to marry her off to a very much elderly than her counselor of his, who has a lot of money. Honorarius needs that money to keep the Roman Empire going against their numerous foes. Some other stuff happens. It's a very convoluted plot, but essentially Julia says no, and when Alaric and the Goths come to in treaty potentially with the Roman Empire, things go south, and Julia basically arranges her own kidnapping. And so she ends up being kidnapped, but of her own choice, and heading off with the Goths. Convoluted plot is the story of this book. So even trying to explain to you the different types of adventures that this band of thieves essentially goes on as they're trying to get back to the Goths' home city, which is essentially the first half of the plot-ish. There are some side quests, there are some things that happen. Essentially, the force that was being led into the Roman capital is dispersed. A lot of them have to go off and do different things, and so it's Julia, Alaric, and then some of his closest friends. And this is where the book's strengths shine through a little bit. He has some lifelong friends, Riga, Thoramund, these teenage twins who he was really good friends with their father, and their father died for him. Horst and Hengist, and they all kind of like, you know, they don't want to like Julia because she's Roman, and they all have their own, you know, issues with the Roman Empire. They love to have died at their hands, but Julia really antagonizes Alaric, and so she's like, they're like, we don't like you, but we find it really, really funny that you can like get under his skin like this. So yeah, it's really weird. Julia is like, you know, she thinks that Alaric is a barbarian and she doesn't want anything to do with him. And he thinks that she is like really stuck up and posh, which she is. It took me a really, really long time to warm to her, and I'm honestly not sure I ever did. It's that she just became slightly more bearable as she lost that sheen of like snob. I didn't really blame him for like being super annoyed with her, honestly. And so they hate each other, but it's like insta lust. Like from the first moment they accidentally like walk past each other in an alley at the beginning of the book, they're both like, yeah, that person is one of the sexiest people I've ever seen. And they're like fighting that as they're like trying to work through this like really dangerous situation, because they're on the run from Roman soldiers who want to, you know, get Julia back because she's a really, really big kidnapping thing. The plot from there does some things. I don't even know how to explain to you what the plot does. Past when Julia and the crew get to Noricum, which is the Goths' home city, I feel like anything that I talk about from there would be a little bit of spoilers, because that really does take up about 50% of the plot. And then the plot just like kicks it up to 11 and goes absolutely haywire. There are some really random things that happen. The pacing of that felt really, really off, especially when compared to like the insta-lust relationship that they were having, which seemed to be accelerating quite quickly as the plot wasn't. And then when the plot like re-accelerates, weird thing happens to the romance plot where it just gets really patchy and it's not being explored in the way that it needs to be. So, yeah, the plot is slow in the beginning and the romance is fast. The plot kicks up to 11 in the second half and the romance mostly disappears, outside of the fact that they are very horny for each other. The secondary issue that I have with this is that the entire basis of friction for our romance pair here, outside of like when they start to lose that enemies to lovers situation, is miscommunication. And this is a pair of people who have so many individuals of miscommunication, both for good and for bad. Like, and you're like, how do you have miscommunication that's good? Like, there is a good thing that has happened and Alaric is really excited about it, and Julia's like, I don't even know if he loves me. And I'm like, what is happening? How like literally all you two do is sleep together and you don't speak, and it's very aggravating because the number of times that things did not have to happen in this novel had they just said literally 2 sentences to each other. Yeah, miscommunication is one of my least, if not my least favorite romance tropes, and the level at which these two achieve that is unlike almost any other romance novel I've ever seen, and I found it incredibly irritating. Honestly, some of my favorite parts of this novel were actually the side characters. You are eventually introduced to one of Alaric's chieftains, who is a woman, and at this time, women are not really expected to be doing that. That's a man's job, and he really stands up for her, and her younger sister are super cool and badass. I already mentioned Alaric's crew, particularly Thormund, who is one of my favorites, who's just like that, like, you know, he's really like the muscle, like the big guy, and has a super, super soft spot for Julia after, you know, they get over it, and their relationship is really, really fun. The twins, actually have maybe some of the most character development throughout the book, which is really strange because honestly, I wasn't really sure if otherwise character development was really going on, except for maybe for the worst in the second half of the book. And again, I really can't tell you what that was like, or I will definitely spoil it, but like the character development for our main characters seems to go a little bit into the negative in the end. Whereas the twins are like, you know, they have like a kind of father, kind of leader relationship with Alaric, and they're also just really fun. And so when they were around, I really liked that dynamic, but they do obviously get less screen time or page time in the second half of the book when the plot just starts to go ding 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 ding. It's really hard to review this book because there definitely was something about it that kept me reading. Like, even though I was annoyed by the miscommunication, and I don't know if for me it was the novelty of it, like this like very different setting, it definitely felt like a unique book, and I was attached enough to the side characters more than our like romantic pair that I wanted to finish it, because I definitely, like, it wasn't a book where I said, okay, I'm gonna stop reading this now. Like, I'm just gonna DNF it and move on and do something else. Like, I definitely finished it and I wanted to finish it. In some ways, now that I realize from the end of the book that there is going to be a second one, there are parts of this now that I look back and I go, oh, was this part of the plot just filler? Or was this whole section of the book just filler to set up the plot of the next book, which really seems to be like the meat of the political machinations, because we're like promised the fall of an empire and political machinations. Indeed, Julia is set up, like I said at the beginning, to be smarter than most of the men around her, and none of that really comes out in the way that you think in this book, and it all seems to have just been sent to book 2. So yeah, this is both like the prequel and a bunch of side quests to set up all these relationships for a potentially very dynamic second book. But at the same time, some of the stuff that I wanted and I thought I was promised didn't show up. And then it's like, if this was just filler, is that why it took them so long to figure out their relationship? Because good God, I'm pretty sure if you did a drinking game with a number of times that they miscommunicated, you would have alcohol poisoning at the end and need to go get medical attention. The excellent news is that you can make up your own mind. Like I said, this book actually came out last week. So it is out right now. You can get it at your local bookstore or your local library, however it is you get your books. I'm very excited that bookshop.org, which is a website that does online book sales but supports local bookstores, has recently opened a ebook option. Previously, it was all physical books. And physical items, but they now are offering ebooks. So if you want to buy ebooks from a place that is not Amazon, you can do that through bookshop.org and their own app. And of course, for audiobooks, you can use bookshop.org as well, or Libro FM as ways to buy online but still support local stores in your area. If you have read this book and you want to get into a discussion of that second half of the book, which I'm not going to do to keep this spoiler free, as long as you keep your comments, like warn people that there's spoilers and hide those spoilers behind the more button, I would love to talk to you about this, because I have so many thoughts and feelings about that second half that just feels so unhinged and weird, that I would love to hear your thoughts on that as well. So if you have, go ahead and leave that down in the comments. This book was just such a reading experience. I sent a text to Michaela and I was like, how does one do a review that is just like 6 question marks? So I've tried, I've done my best, and let me know what you thought down in the comments below. Otherwise, I'll see you guys next time. Thanks guys, bye.